going on this computer? Hello, viewer on YouTube. Welcome to episode 40 of Connection Over Coffee with me, Phil McCall of The Loneliness Guy. And I'm so excited before I press record on the audio here to say hi again to my friend, Mike Campbell. Mike, how you going?
I am wonderful, thank you, Phil.
Wonderful. Wow. Yeah. Huh. Well, no one ever says that, I've noticed. It's always like, yeah, really? I'm good. Maybe it's just I've been, hanging with too many teenagers.
No, I think that's a common one.
Yeah.
Good's a filler.
Yeah.
It's a modern day grunt.
Yeah. Yeah. No,
maybe exacerbated in the company of adolescent teenagers.
Yeah. Maybe. I don't know. And then suddenly they get all very eloquent and loquacious and just sort of go on and on and on when it's about something. But ask them how they are. Good. How was school? Good. Right. So I'm going to press record on this. I just wanted to say a special welcome to those of you on YouTube who are watching. Go and get us a coffee. If you are listening, not go and get us, go and get yourself a coffee.
Yeah, we're waiting.
I actually just we feel like the schoolyard bullies. It's like, get us a coffee. But if you were listening on the podcast, there was a whole intro that I've pre-recorded. So I'm just going to press go on this, but just hi and welcome. All right, that's all going there. You ready, Mike?
I'm ready.
All right. Mike Campbell, welcome back to Connection Over Coffee. How are you going?
I am wonderful. Thank you, Phil.
And listener, if you were watching on YouTube, you would have just got this whole bit of shtick between Mike and I about how we answer the "How are you?" question. I'm just going to leave it there because it was like this whole thing. You had to be there. Go and join us.
Hey, look, here's a challenge for us. Can we loop this conversation back to that at some point?
Oh, wonderful. We need to weave wonderful in.
Yes.
I hear you're wonderful and I raise you splendid.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, no, it's splendid. I'm splendid. And it just adds a little, air of refinement, I'd say.
It does.
Yeah, it does. Splendid. So, Mike Campbell, this is the second time that you've joined us here. And for those listeners, the viewer who may not have joined us, unforgivably, for episode 10, where we explored why it's so hard to ask for help. What do you do? Who are you? What do you do?
Well, I mean, look, who am I? That's the big philosophical question, right? But yeah, I mean, in the simple sense, I'm Mike Campbell. And yeah, I think, if you've listened to Phil's intro, I'm a man coach, and that's the simple label that I attach to myself, I suppose. But like, what the hell is that? That's often the question. Am I going to try and teach you to fight a bear, or even pronounce that word correctly with my Kiwi accent? Is it about trying? Am I trying to teach men to be men and all this kind of thing? And I'm going to tell you something. So first of all, no, like fundamentally what I do, and obviously this, Phil, is the simplest way I can say it is, I like to bring a no bullshit approach to supporting men and understanding themselves, getting their shit together, and getting more from life, love, and the everyday. But slight tangent to a charity application process a couple of years ago with another little kind of side project of mine, which was essentially the charity. The work that we do is that it's supporting men, and it's it's not another mental health charity for men. It's very much about proactive, preventative, I think kind of emotional literacy. And when we came up with the person from the Australian agency that is there to give us the stamp that we need for the status that we need, they obviously heard or at least read the initial details, and they had this preconceived idea straight away, boom, that we are basically this kind of like outdated, misogynistic, quote, toxic masculinity, trying to teach this kind of brand of like blokeism. And I was like, what? How can you even think that anyone would have the sense to try it and turn that into a charity, one. And two, did you not read the application? So I can understand how you can hear that term and certainly think maybe that it's all about, blokiness and all that kind of stuff. I mean, in essence, my work is talking to 20-year-old Mike, in a sense, and supporting him and understanding himself a hell of a lot better, I'll say me, so it's easier, what I'm about, what I care about, what I want in the world, and what's available to me, and actually being able to step into that. And that's kind of supporting men and, getting past their shit and stepping into who they can be.
I love that. And a couple of things there that I just wanted to unpack, almost linguistically, for for he who's listening on the podcast or watching on YouTube, and they've used the go back button a couple of times to try and understand what some of the words were. So just for reference, everyone, that bear. Mike said wrestle a bear, not a bear holding a beer. So fun fact, if you don't know the difference between a Kiwi accent and an Australian accent, first of all, shame on you. But second of all, it's you just get like Kiwis say beer and bear exactly the same way.
Kiwis don't know how to pronounce those types of words different from each other. The hair on my head is the same as the animal that's a big version of a rabbit, and come over here, it's all the same. I'll do my best to differentiate, but there's a chance that I could screw it up.
No, do you? Like, the world needs more Kiwi accents, I say. And you might also hear him say women, but it comes out woman.
I haven't figured this one out.
Yeah. So Kiwis say woman, like one woman, two woman. Sometimes. So
what's it supposed to be?
Is out's an Australian accent to a Kiwi, women. So yeah. Okay. So yes, the number of times, viewer, listener, that I would be given so much crap in New Zealand for speaking with an Australian accent, but now I proudly straddle the ditch, the Tasman between us, and I act as an Australian to Kiwi interpreter and a Kiwi to Australian interpreter. And the other one is bloke. So for those of you not in, well, unfortunately, who have the misfortune of not being in Australia and New Zealand, a bloke is, you might want to think of it as someone like a dude or a guy. If you're from North America, it's like the stereotypical, like, bloke.
The man's man, that kind of idea that we have, I suppose, of whatever connotations come with that.
Yeah, and Mike and I off camera, and before I pressed record, we were talking about, the guy who drinks like what in Australia is called like VB. So Victoria Bitter, you might want to think of it as someone who drinks like Bud if you're in the US, or Molson or something in Canada. But someone who like, where like just has the connotation of like, one of the like the lads, one of the guys who kind of just gets up to no good, and I think you all know what I mean. But that's what a bloke is. Just
and probably an important point, which will probably come into the rest of the conversation, is like I think what often comes with that is like that is the identity. Not just what we're describing, but like the dude is kind of, he embodies that as his identity. I'm just a everyday bloke, or fill in the word from wherever you are from, right? The man's man. Yeah. And that can at once be helpful as placing him into a wider community, but also can feel like, as so many of us know, when we're trying to occupy a space that's not for us, it can also be deeply uncomfortable for the wearer or for the guy to whom that label is attached. So it could both be, a place of welcome and a place of feeling that they belong, but also a place of not at all feeling that they belong. But that's like a whole other. I can wear the skin, but it's not necessarily mine, right?
Yeah. That's kind of gross, but it's so true. It's so true. And for so many of us gay men, I think that we can really resonate with that, where we, at some point in our lives have possibly not felt at all comfortable in our own skin and wanted things to have been really different to what the reality has been. So, Mike, now that we've got, what a man coach does and what you do, I also want to say that one of the things that I find, working with you on your programs and having done your programs a lot in the past, is that you have this ability, you have this real ability to, you say this a lot, I think you call it loving straight talk. I think in the intro, I changed loving straight talk to loving direct talk. But also I like just that ability to see the individual for who they are and what they're possibly scared of within themselves. They may not be scared of within themselves, but might be completely unaware that it's there, or they know that it's there and they're absolutely terrified of what it could mean, or they sort of get glimpses of it, but they're afraid of sort of being who they are. Listener, viewer, I can't say often enough how frequently, Mike, you and I know this, when guys start the program, how terrified they are and how lost they are, because they've been straddling this trying to occupy a space which really doesn't ever exist in life, where they're trying to be not big, not too big, but not small. They're trying to fit into a place that really is not theirs. And you have that ability.
The Goldilocks zone of existence where,
yeah,
don't be too big and get cut down, but don't be too small, because we obviously want to feel like we're important and we're valued. And so it's this middle gray area, which, look, there's lots to it, but I think in a simple sense, it's wildly unsatisfying.
It's very mediocre. Yeah. And not only that, that Goldilocks zone always changes. So you might be in it for a few minutes and then it changes somewhat somewhere. So, really the best way to live life is to be ourselves. And that's what you do. And because I could say that because that's what you did for us. Well, for us, the royal me, the plural me. That's what you did for me. And I see it all the time in the work that you do. So, listener, viewer, do not be put off by man's coach. It's a coach for you as a man, to be the man that you are.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, I could say men's coach, but for me, it just doesn't. I don't know. It's just something that doesn't really grab me.
Yeah.
But that might be an easier term to grasp, maybe.
Well, what you're saying here has a particular resonance for me, because the number of people who go to me, why are you the loneliness guy? Why can't you be the connection expert? Why can't you, I don't know, loneliness is so there. Why don't you just focus on the good bit, which is connection and how to get connected and stuff? And I'm like, well, nothing changes unless we can't say the word. How can we own it?
Exactly.
So I'm here saying the word.
Also.
Yeah, say the word, Mike. So, Mike, what we're going to be talking about for this episode, beyond witty repartee and shooting the breeze, is talking about the topic of gay body image and loneliness. And I said in the intro that I wrote a blog post and published a blog post, and during that blog post, during the writing of that, and I shared with people on social media a few weeks ago that the topic was so enormous, and it basically just blew my mind. Oh yeah, of course I've got this sorted. I can write on this, and it took me a couple of weeks and then 2 solid days writing to sort of untangle everything and just come up with something simple. But one of the things that I really want to get your take on is, for men, in your experience, how does body image, well, two questions. How does it sort of manifest, and what kind of role does it play in your experience of like how we show up?
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those very central things, I think, that often sits at the base of who we are. You know, I mean, image, it's how we see ourselves, like literally in terms of when I view my body, but also, you know, more on a perhaps more esoteric level of how I see, you know, who I am, and how much we often attach our worth and our identity and our place in the world, you know, on how we see ourselves and then what we actually see in the mirror with our body. And so it becomes this thing that I think we have let's just say broadly, a poor relationship with a lot of the time. And so how it manifests is in all sorts of things, you know, from the dude who looks like he's not ripped or big or muscly. Does he work out? Do you work out? You know, to the dad bod, to the overweight guy. It manifests in so many ways, right? Where the differentiation might really come in, I think perhaps more is the psychology and the thinking around it. Yeah, it holds so much charge, right? Our bodies, you know, and I think so really it invites us to look at the relationship we have to our body, which ultimately for me always comes back to the relationship that we have to ourselves. I mean, those things are inseparable. So yeah, I'll stop there for a second and we can go from there.
Because I think, I mean, you've answered that first question. You've answered that first question, particularly that, you know, it is central, and the how we view ourselves comes across in how we present to others. So the question, and I guess this goes really to the heart of it, is how do you feel that affects our ability, our willingness, our openness to connection?
Yeah, I mean, often we I suppose see it as the bridge. What my body is, and therefore, you know, how I view myself and the stories and the judgments that I have around it, and perhaps that I fear around it, will determine how I allow myself to show up in the world in general a lot of the time, but also when it comes to, you know, connection with others. And I'm sure we'll speak about it a fair bit, but, you know, there's often this element of worthiness sitting right in there. And, you know, like the body often manifests or attempts to hide, but in hiding it, it's showing it in plain day, I think, a lot of the time, where our insecurities are. You know, I mean, you take one guy who's, you know, completely shredded and ripped and massive, and you put him next to a guy with, let's call it, somewhat of an identical body, and they might have some massively different pasts and histories, and sometimes insecurities, but they've got to this place often where there's a desire to mask this thing that was below it, and it was in terms of the former body, but often that still is in terms of how I see myself. And so, you know, I can step into a relationship when I am, you know, this many pounds or kilos lighter, or, you know, that my arms get to a certain size, fill in the thing, it doesn't really matter. And so it becomes often, and more broadly speaking for men, here's one of the things that I think is so central when it comes to the body, but, you know, also beyond this, it becomes a key part in how we measure, but I think more so how we think it has been measured, our success as a man. You know, what my body is, how it looks, what it can do. You know, like physicality and you know, the heart of the masculine is this like thing that needs to be strong and provide and hunt animals at a very, very deep kind of anthropological level. But how that's manifested a lot of the time now is how big and strong and tough I am, and how many people I can help and save and fix things for, and you know, that kind of thing. The ability to hunt is often for some guys my you know, my strength and what I can do with my body, perhaps in a fighting or a strength or a fucking kind of way. We attach so much to it, and beyond all of those things, what your body is tells me nothing about who you are as a person, but we often equate it to so much of who we are.
And I think that's a really important.
Well, no, it can reflect part of who we are. Like, let's not just throw the baby out with the bathwater, right? You know, potentially it's so, oh, this is a guy who respects himself and is willing to looks after his health, but it doesn't necessarily tell us that story, because it could be deeply, you know, driven by insecurity and so on. So, yeah. Yeah.
And I think that's a really good point for the gay man who's listening or watching, particularly that that narrative around, like, you know, the prehistoric, you know, hunter and stuff. And while we're not going and slaying wildebeest generally, you know, for many that hunting is on Grindr. That hunting is, you know, in gay spaces, and the weapon of choice to do that hunting is the body. And absolutely, like the prowess, or the pride in that kind of the success is measured in a similar way, of like how you can satisfy the needs, the perceived needs of yourself and others. So I think that's a really important point there. And one thing that I'm really sort of keen to bring in is the a gay perspective. And because quite obviously, like when we're straight, we know that, you know, we're using our body to attract either, you know, a woman or women, or in a splendid way, you know, trying to have our, like, improve our social standings with our friends. And, you know, and that can be demonstrated through all sorts of things, but, you know, notches on the bed, on the bed head, you know, for the number of
what a fucking crazy term that is, by the way. I've never not really thought about that term since probably I was younger. Does that exist because people did that? That's crazy to me. But anyway, please keep going.
Must have. But, you know, a stat, right? Or, you know, or whatever. But when we're gay, we aren't in the business of attracting or being attracted to, or having someone of the opposite sex attracted to us, or being attracted to the opposite sex sexually. However, what we're doing is that we are attracted to someone who basically at a genetic level is exactly the same as us. You know, and you know, doesn't have boobs, and who has a cock, and, you know, a deep voice, all that kind of stuff. Like, you know, we're attracted to another man or men. And so that kind of gets an added complication, because we're not only looking to attract, we're also looking to be attractive to people who are essentially the same as us. And that sort of complication is really important to be aware of, because what we're doing is a couple of different things I reckon can happen. One is that we are attracted to qualities, physical qualities in other men that we find attractive in ourselves. And we can be repelled by the other side of the coin. We can be repelled by physical attributes of other men that we find repellent in ourselves. So if we don't like, beer guts, if we don't like, big hairy bears, see what I did there with the words, but if we don't like that, but we ourselves, a little heavier, a little hairier, then we can feel a tension within ourselves. Couple that with the power of social media, which, as you know, can be an absolute smorgasbord of images for what we like.
Yeah, that's part of what it is, right? It's just imagery of things that are appealing to the eye, or maybe.
Yeah. So if we're constantly getting, not just in our day-to-day life, in our lived experience, but we see from the comfort of our couch, or, we're scrolling social media and, we're just sort of like image after image after image after image of men who we think are really attractive, because the algorithm pretty much works that out. So we teach it what we like by liking things. And we can then be surrounded by, like, maybe not like literally surrounded by, but we consume so much content of bodies that are indeed, what we love looking at and aspire to be, that can be really, we can sleepwalk into that problem, and it's an enormous problem, I reckon. Because we are absolutely surrounded by images that we essentially lust after, and that lust can be of images of bodies that we love about ourselves or hate about ourselves, or a really weird, well, not weird mix, but a complex mix.
Yeah, perhaps the other point there is like of what we expect of ourselves, because we might not be there, but that's the giant expectation. It becomes this whole clusterfuck of like, push pull towards this thing, and the judgment and the fear of judgment, and then I'm not there, but I should be there, and then I'm not, I want that, but I can't get that until I am that, and all this kind of shit, right? And man, like, one, I don't have that lived experience, right, of being gay and being in that body. But here's something that I actually think I see truth in, and may potentially offer also a different sight for some gay men listening. Because the other thing, if I imagine, if you talk to your straight friends who are, fairly consistent with their fitness routine, let's say, one thing that I know to be true that is so central and foundational for men is respect. Respect is this thing that we are going into the world craving to experience from others, and often we're going about it in a slightly off kilter, let's just say, ineffective way, where I'm hoping that how I show up in the world and all the things that I do and am and be and accomplish and so on will allow me to get respect from the world, and then I can kind of respect myself, right? It's the flow. The equation doesn't really work in that way, but the body is one of the biggest avenues for that. And so if you go to any weights room, regardless of the dudes, there's often, well, you know what? I want to have the respect of these dudes in here. And I think that's actually happening a lot. There's obviously this whole other element and huge, depth to it when it comes to, the attraction, as you're saying. But I also think that that's very, very central for a lot of guys. And maybe it really complicates it as well. But again, if you come back to something that's very, like, actually evolutionary, there's this need to know that the men around me have strength. they can actually go into war with me. We can hunt and survive. And so I think this is often what we find when we're looking at any of this kind of stuff with humans. There is some like real biological driver shit that we need to understand on a level to help us also understand the humans that we want to be. Because then what we're not doing is just leaning back on, evolution and going, that's just, I'm a man.
Yes.
No, that's a cop out. But it helps us understand like there is a driver in us innately to express our masculinity through our bodies. But when we attach, am I enough of a man, let's say, to my body, then we've gone into this whole other area. Because that all of a sudden I'm attaching everything. And then if you enter in, all of this potential confusion and head fuck around, well, the attraction and this and that and the back and forth and who, and again, what I think comes into a lot of the center of that is my insecurities playing out, and then therefore like enoughness and worthiness and all this kind of stuff. And so potentially what's happening on a simple outcome level is where my body is and what my relationship is to it and how I see it and how I view it is a reflection of my insecurities around it.
I really want to explore enoughness as a concept, because I think that's really critical, particularly when the perception of ourselves physically can prevent us from engaging in the world and or not engaging with the world and sort of feeding our loneliness. But I want to, just before we do that though, there's one thing that I really want to come back to, and I really want to highlight that point about respect that you said. And in the blog post, I talked about how our body is our armor. And there's no really kind way of saying this, but gay spaces are not, and can be, but are generally, and I don't like to speak generally, so I'll say can be, incredibly judgmental. Incredibly judgmental, because really what we're looking at is anatomically exactly the same as each other.
Would you say that manifests in a way where it, as you say, it can be more judgmental outwardly, meaning it's spoken?
Yes.
Yeah. Whereas I think, that for humans, there's often that judgment, but perhaps, maybe in different environments for straight men, it's not as voiced.
Yes, it's both.
Yeah,
it's both. And either way, we're terrified of it. We're terrified of judgment because often, depending on the lived experience, often we have been judged like through life by ourselves, by family, by friends, by people like, kids in our classes who were very, free with their sharing their perspective on how we show up in the world. And that's deeply scarring. That is so deeply damaging and scarring, and that plays out. And so we often get, and you get this, I had this experience myself, like, you have the courage to come out, and then you sort of go into, this gay community that's meant to be open and inclusive and full of pride, rainbows and unicorns and, disco music and all that kind of stuff. And it's meant to be an open space where you can be you, but you quickly learn that unless you are the right kind, you're not accepted. And you're constantly, battling, like there's another battle for worthiness, enoughness, for belonging, all that kind of stuff, which kind of can be crushingly disappointed for someone who goes, oh, you know what, my loneliness, like being gay and in the closet feeds my loneliness, right? Courage, coming out. Come out, go, well, evidently I'm not enough to be gay, or I don't know how to be gay. And, to do that, I need to, do this, wear that, whatever it is say this, have these friends, look like this, whatever it is.
Yeah, there's an acceptance, but then there's a new level of it.
And then there's like this secret room that you never
different
knew
dance. No more that dance. We're not doing that dance, but there's a different dance over here.
Yeah, and you have to learn the dance all over. So the other thing there is, like about respect, sort of coming from that central concept of respect there. There's our body as armor to deflect all of that. And if we have like the perfect body,
which is
that's one less thing. Wow, who knows? Like again, it's that Goldilocks.
But that's a very important fucking point.
It is. It's absolute Goldilocks, though. Yeah.
There is no point, because the further you chase that dragon, the more insanely refined that the dragon becomes, and there's always something.
Yeah.
And if you're in a space where you currently think no, that's nice for you guys, it's that no, but for me there just isn't a perfect body. And so that doesn't mean that we throw the baby out with the bathwater and go, well, fuck it, I shouldn't try. I shouldn't have respect for myself and my body. It means actually ask yourself, how do I want to feel? And what can I accept when it comes to my body? Because guess what? You're always going to have fat, and you're always going to have this thing, and you're always going to have that thing. And beyond the look, every day we're all aging. So there's also going to be other things that our body does and doesn't do that we might want it to or not want it to do. So there's always an acceptance there, right? Like every day, it doesn't matter how much you're working on the appearance and aesthetics of your body. Every day it's actually getting closer to being more imperfect because it's aging. You just can't fight that. Which
is sometimes, well, I would say for myself anyway, far better than the alternative.
Well, I think every day if we look at it like that, every day it's potentially inviting acceptance of this thing that is my vehicle for how I experience the world.
Yes. Oh, this is really good. I want to bookmark this bit too. I just want to go back. And I don't want to like labor the point, but that respect thing.
Yes.
Look at the armor. So if I'm perfect, as flawed as that logic is, and undoubtedly it's flawed, it's a hiding to nothing, because perfection doesn't exist.
It's so mean to yourself.
It is. It's horrible.
Right? It's so unfair, and so it's lacking respect for yourself. It really is. But man, like what an expectation.
Yeah.
Please continue.
And so I will give the haters one less thing if I'm physically perfect. Right. So that's that. The second part is and that goes to the judgment. Showing up.
Yeah, perfection is a chase to be immune to judgment, which of course it can't. It can't happen because I'm judging myself by default in that state.
And it's fool's gold. It's fool's gold. And I'm reminded by my intellectual crush, Dr. Brene Brown, who, and I know you laugh whenever I say that. Listener, viewer, Mike put me to Brene Brown. So I feel like, he's brought me into the scheme. But it's kind of like, awesomeness crypto, perhaps. But the other thing is we seek, like imperfection is beautiful, and owning imperfection is glorious. But we see this, and I'm paraphrasing Dr. Brown here, but we see all of that as awesome in other people, but something to be ashamed of in ourselves. And that can't be right. We need to be showing up in the world as gloriously imperfect as we are, physically, mentally, and emotionally. Because we're never going to be ready. And this is a perfect segue to get into enoughness. So I think one of the things there is, as you said, we see it as awesome and like, oh, that's so great, when others embrace their imperfections, all that kind of stuff, but we struggle to do so in ourselves. I think as us as a whole, but also I think physically, look, the things that we want to hide and change and perfect, I would put it to you that those are the things that the person who is going to love you the most
they are a big part of the picture as to why they are going to love you the way they do. And look, maybe that's a love handle, maybe it isn't. But here's something I also know to be true about men. Regardless of our partner, what we tend to like in our partner is their body shape. At the crux of it, right? Yep. We often have all of our shit on the lenses in which we view that insecurity, the judgments, what we hear, the perfection, all that stuff that you're talking about, Phil, right? In terms of like, now you're a gay man, it's got to look like this. Actually, when you get down to it and you can get all that shit out of the way, we're attracted to a body shape. And so I like to come back to that. And I also like to remind my wife, because, she got her shit going on with her body. Well, guess what? That thing and that thing, cool. But the thing that I am attracted to most is actually, in terms of your physique, is your body shape. And so I think if we can connect to that and we sit with ourselves and go, how accurate is that? When I take out all of the judgment and the noise, because then I get to turn that back on myself. How can I celebrate my body's shape?
Yes.
And you see how that gives so much more space for fucking like actually giving a shit about ourselves. I'm slightly reluctant to use the term self-love.
Yep.
And then I can embrace what is, and this is something that we've spoken about, globally as well as, personally, this idea that my body is this thing that I get to respect because it is the thing that helps me experience the world. It's this amazing thing that I have to do and be and, move and create and all the things. I feel like that the body shape is a piece that is so much easier to sit with, because, to your point about enoughness and worthiness, if I'm putting so much on what my body looks like until I can feel enough, man, that is very hard. And, I think I've spoken this before, but it feels relevant here. The relationship to body and therefore self that often manifests in that, I need to starve or punish, treat my body like shit to get it to a place that I can then like. It's so flawed. You can't hate yourself to self-love. You can't hate yourself to a body that is then going to end up in a good relationship with your body, because the foundation was hate and dislike and punishment and all those kind of things. That just can't work. And so if my worthiness and how I feel about myself and can I even enter into a relationship, all these things is tied into that, it's going to be very, very difficult, unpleasant, murky, frustrating, unfulfilling waters to wade through.
I just want the
that's
listener,
my rant.
No, God, no. I just want the listener and the viewer to reflect on that, because that's such a fundamental point. We cannot hate our bodies into submission. We can't hate anything into becoming something. And then having hated our body into a state, into a look, we can't suddenly pick things up and go, well, I love you now. That's a terrible kind of relationship.
Yeah, and like we might, because let's voice something that does happen, like I might really flog myself. I might have a terrible relationship with my body, and I might get to a point where aesthetically, objectively from the outside, I have this lean body and the muscles here and the abs and the body fat percentage and all these things. And I might shift across time my relationship to myself. It might improve, let's say. If the motivations were very much based in punishment and, I'm not good enough and you're a piece of shit and you look at that fat there and that might shift. I would say the majority of the reason why that shifts is not because now visually it's this perfect thing, but I've shown myself that I can actually apply myself to challenging stuff. Like I can, work out consistently and do tough things physically with my body. And I've built some mental strength and resilience. Those things, I think, actually trump what changes in the physical, right? It's not about who like the point I get to, it's about who I become in the process.
Yes.
And so I think that thing can happen, but we also need to acknowledge what is actually happening there most of the time. I can have pride in myself because I actually set myself a goal and I executed on it. Like that is something to be proud of.
Right. Yep. Mike, I just want to pause there for a moment and go to a quick break. No, God, you're not here to just keep your mouth closed. You're here to do exactly the opposite. I just want to cut to a quick break because I want to have a quick chat with the listener. Okay, welcome back. So what I want to do, Mike, is I want to explore the concept of enoughness. So there's so many things, and I'm just very aware of the time. And time is getting away from us. But one of the things that I really want to just sort of, before we get into the concept of enoughness, is to revisit that concept just really quickly and underline that. It is okay to be proud of what you achieved. It's okay to, indeed, it is a really good thing to love the process, to love the discipline, to love like the setting of a goal, the working towards it. And when it comes to physicality and our body, we're never going to reach the destination. We're always going to be a work in progress. So you may as well
look,
love
there's always someone
the
stronger.
process.
You can be stronger. Those things, but also you can be in love with who you're becoming in the process, and who you are for having done those things, and of course for where you get to.
Yeah.
Look at my body. Look what I can do with it now. But that's the point. What can I do with this thing? Right? I'm strong. That feels good. I can run up the stairs and not bend over, whatever. But those are really the things to connect to.
And I think here, and I did write this in the blog post, before I get to the last point of enough, I want to sort of come to this really quickly. And that is a critical learning of myself. And, I shared in the blog post that I spent years and years and years hating myself into submission, that I saw my body as as ineffective and an impediment to me belonging. So, I went to a boarding school, and the people around me, the guys around me, were incredibly sporty. I was not. And so my adolescent mind, as I'm sure so many of you listeners and viewers are getting to right now, is that, if you were a skinny teenager like I was, that, the key to acceptance, the key to belonging that we so longed for was to be able to smash out 100 push-ups and then flip over, which, can be a good thing now that, as a gay man, but you'd flip over and get onto your back and do some sit-ups and smash out an equal amount of sit-ups. And then, some burpees or whatever it is now.
So you know what, Phil? I'm running on instinct here. This might be a great place to take this, because do you know what? That was me. I'm the dude who was athletic and had abs from the age of 12.
Right.
And do you know what was the most awkward thing for me growing up? People wanting to see my abs. It made me so wildly uncomfortable.
Right.
So let's just throw that little hand grenade in there.
Well, and it's always like the,
it was this weird push-pull thing. Like, there's no doubt about it. But I've lived that, let's say, that might have been seen as the ideal.
Yeah.
I don't think it contributed to a genuine sense of belonging, but it wasn't just some amazing experience. You know what I mean? Like, it was deeply awkward for the most part.
Well, there's that, because I'm going to say that, it can lead to a skewed, altered sense of belonging. That I'm worthy if I have the abs. I am worthy when I get the abs, when I get the, the great chest, or, the nice peach, or whatever it is.
Or to the broader points, perhaps, of like what I can do with my body. I am the athletic kid, all those kind of things, right?
Yeah.
And as the kid who essentially, was that in part, I think in reflection, that was part of the broader dialogue, because we have that fucking idea that's insidious.
Yeah.
Right.
Yes.
But I can tell you with accuracy, it didn't actually do, quote, its job. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yes.
It didn't contribute to that. And again, it's really easy to now come in with those things. That's well enough for you. But like, I actually live the other side of the coin.
I'm not at all interested generally in having, a competition around this stuff. And I know that's not, but when we kind of get into this space, when we're talking about worthiness and belonging and stuff, like all of our stories lead us to the point of not feeling worthy, not feeling like we belong, and indeed feeling lonely. There are many different ways that we can get to the same point, listener, many different ways that we can get to the same point, viewer. One of the things that I coming back to me, like my podcast, this is about me, but is, in the blog, I did share that, through like Mike, we did, and just in a group that we run last month, it's all about the body and doing a particular challenge. February, not much, but a particular challenge. And I'm not going to share it here, but one of the things, like, this was really pivotal for me. Well, I won't go into details, but it involved me standing in front of a mirror, naked, and except for my glasses, so I could see myself, and a notepad. And that was so profoundly transformative for me that it made me incredibly sad that I had tried to hate myself into submission. And, I can come at it from another angle and give myself physically the same level of love and support that I so freely give to everyone else. I can give to myself.
And that you were hoping to get from others?
I was
if your body, if you beat it into submission, do you think?
Well, hoping to get from others, but I also was getting it from others. I just was never allowing myself.
Yes.
Like the stories were like the brick. My own stories in my mind were the brick wall that would stop anything coming in. And so that started me on this, and this is a really incredible point. And Mike, you said it before, is focusing on how our body feels, not looks.
Yeah, and how we want it to feel.
And how we want it to feel. Yeah. And, and then it looks how it looks. But that feeling is absolutely, for me, that feeling is it. I could go on for a whole lot longer about all of this, and happy to with the listener or the viewer. If you want to reach out to me, please do feel free. I'm happy to be here and as support.
Well, I'll second that, because there's so much beauty in that lived experience that Phil is sharing. The going through the experience of like those shifts and connections. Like, to my point, I don't have that lived experience, and there's so much beauty in Phil's experience and the shift that he's got to. So, hey, reach out.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you. Final point. And this is the big one. We've kind of been building up to this, and this is how our body image can be the impediment, or how our negative body image feeds our loneliness. And it comes to the concept of enoughness. And we've talked about this, but kind of peppered it around it. And I've tried to let's save it to the end. Let's save it to the end. But
hit me.
Yeah. But I think it's impossible to save it to the end, because it is so central to everything that we've been talking about.
I mean, it's everything, exactly.
So to the listener, to the viewer, Mike, who is struggling with their body image, who is, I will be ready, I will be worthy of love and belonging. This is deep. I'll be worthy of love and belonging when I am this weight, or like skinny enough, ripped enough.
Fill in the blank, yeah.
Whatever X is, I'll be X enough. What do you say? What do you say to them? What do you say to him?
You are so far from alone in what you're experiencing. That is a incredibly common, mode of being and belief system that we have attached so much of who we think we are and how and how worthy of love and belonging, etc. We are to our body, but it's also a wildly futile endeavor. And, look, it might not come out as accurate or as deep as, like I am worthy of love and belonging, but it might sound like any other number of justifications. I will start dating when I, lose those kilos, or, when my shoulders have a certain thing. Like, what we're fundamentally still really pointing to there is you've actually made it about your worthiness. Your body is your body. Your worthiness is separate to your body. Your attraction to someone is different to your worthiness. And so what we'll often struggle with here is, let's say this back to that conversation of like same with, and so the attraction I see in Amanda, if Phil finds me attractive or not, it is separate to whether or not I am worthy of his love. But that's the connection that we mistakenly make. We attach there. Someone can reject you because they don't like your body. They don't have to like your body, but that doesn't mean you're not good enough for them. Because your worthiness just is. If I take it into a different realm, if you're at work and you miss out on a promotion and they say, look, and let's say they actually say these words, you're not good enough for this role. One would hope that what they mean there is you don't currently have the skill set that we need for this role. But what we will often do is make that meaning, I'm not good enough. And it becomes about my identity and who I am and my worthiness. It's not. Maybe there's an opportunity to go and educate yourself and become more skilled and so on. But in the realm of our body, man, we connect so much to it. And your attractiveness to someone or not is not the same as your worthiness. Because as you said, Phil, what we're essentially speaking to with worthiness is, do I believe I'm worthy of love and belonging? And what your body is currently is and situated at and etc. Is not connected to that. But how you view yourself is. And so we get to be whatever your body is and a work in progress. But the mistake that we're making often in there is that it's all reliant on how other people view it versus how I feel and what I choose to do with it. And so I think the thing that is so much of that is leaning on is the feedback, the praise, the validation, or the being chosen, right? Someone seeing me as attractive enough, or the opposite, the rejection, the judgment. It's all external. It's so disempowered. I can't own that. And so that's when my body becomes this thing that I use as a tool to try and negate or fit into those very, very, square box, round hole kind of things. There's no lonelier place to be than hating on yourself and needing the validations of others not to feel lonely.
Can you say that again, please? That's the shit. Can you say it again, please?
There's no lonelier place to be than hating on yourself and needing the validations of others to not feel lonely, to not feel like you aren't deserving of love, that you're worthy. Because all of a sudden, I'm not in charge of how I feel.
Wow. Goosebumps. Goosebumps. Because that is so true. I'll add another so in there just for emphasis. But fuck, Mike. Yes.
And look, we can exchange the words there, like your body, it could be any other thing that you've connected to your worth. But obviously for this, it's such a present thing that we do, because you also might have that in another few things, let's say your job, what your bank account is, all these things, any of those things. But when it comes to the body, what was hopefully part of what we're saying here is, don't just not bother working on your physical, and mental and emotional well-being, but actually start to connect to the reasons that are yours. How do I want to feel? How do I want to feel about myself? What do I want my body to do? Those things that Phil was talking to, right, with your own examples, because that's empowered. It's yours.
And to do all of that, I hasten to add, from a place of knowing that you're worthy now.
Exactly. Yeah.
And I remember having this conversation, just needing to wrap up now, Mike, but I remember having this conversation on an episode of your podcast, Everyday Legends, where I was talking about the cure to loneliness. You asked me, Phil, what's the cure to loneliness? It's like, gee, Mike, that seems to be like
softball.
That seems to be like a bit of a career that I'm trying to build here. But yeah, sure, I'll give you the scoop. But no, really, it's simple. It's simple, but it's simple and a lifelong goal. Lifelong work is to remember that your worthiness is never given to you. It simply is. And it is our job to keep, if we imagine our worthiness as a candle, to keep the candle burning. And we are awesome at blowing our own candle out when we do not feel that we are worthy. I'll let that sink in, because there's a reason, listener and viewer, that me and Jeff are making candles. That's one of the reasons. So, Mike, I could talk about this for hours, and I'm sure, like we will again, and continue. How can the listener and the viewer find you?
Well, the internet is a wonderful thing. I'm sure you'll have the links and stuff, but come and find me on Instagram as a fairly simple way to find me, Mike Campbell MC. In terms of like, if you want to actually interact or like, tap me on the shoulder, so to speak, and ask some questions. Here's what I'll say to that. I love getting questions and hearing from people, hey, I heard you on Phil's podcast and that kind of thing. And it's great. And my invitation to you is absolutely anyone, feel free to come and ask me questions and reach out and so on. What I'd love to see you do is tell me what you took from this and then what you're actually going to do with it. Put this stuff into action. And that might be something as simple as having a conversation with someone else, reaching out to Phil and all the things. Great. Right. But let's also work on taking small steps.
I love it, because we can be inspired. This is a point in the blog too. We can be inspired by these comparisons. We can also use comparisons to be the thief of joy, but we can use these experiences to reach out and say, thank you. And this is what I took from it and what I'm doing with it. Love it. Love it, Mike. Mike, thank you so much. I love you. I love what you do, and I really appreciate you being here. You are it brings me such joy to be in your corner, to be helping you in my own small way with the work that you do. And I want to thank you very publicly for the help and support that you continue to give me in this loneliness work that I'm doing. I just so love it, love you, and appreciate it. Thank you.
You are incredibly welcome, a privilege, and I shall very gratefully receive that.
Thanks, Mike.